When something catches your eye, a dusty, beaten-up yearbook, its cover faded and yellowed with age. You pick it up, flip through the pages casually, and stop. There's a name in there that shouldn't be. It's not just a random name, no, it's someone who doesn't belong. Someone whose face doesn't seem to fit in this timeline. It's like a puzzle piece that's been inserted into the wrong puzzle. They never should have been part of this yearbook, yet here they are, staring back at you, frozen in time, immortalized among the graduating class. The catch? This person was never enrolled in the school. Now, think about that for a moment. What does that mean? Why was this name included, and how did their picture end up in a book that only holds the faces of students who spent years in those halls? It doesn't make sense. And as we dig deeper into this story, it's not just about the mystery of one student's photograph. It's about the secrets hidden behind the glossy pages, the whispers in the halls, and the things that even the teachers don't want to talk about. There's a bigger story here, one that involves the very fabric of the school's history, a forgotten tale that's been left to rot in the corners of time, only to be discovered now. So, you might be wondering, who is this mystery student, and why did they end up in this yearbook? Were they a ghost of sorts, someone who never existed in the official records but somehow lived in the memories of others? Or is it something darker, a cover-up or a mistake that nobody dared to question until now? Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one because, as we piece this together, you'll start to see just how deep the rabbit hole goes. And by the end of this video, I'll reveal a truth so shocking, it'll make you question everything you thought you knew about what really happens behind closed doors in our schools. I know you're probably sitting there thinking, this sounds like some sort of weird urban legend or a plot from a mystery novel. And hey, I get it, it's bizarre. But this is not fiction. This is real life, and sometimes, reality is stranger than anything you could have imagined. You're about to uncover something that could change the way you think about school yearbooks, student records, and even the very idea of belonging. But before we dive into all that, let's rewind a bit and take a closer look at what we know so far. First things first, let me tell you about the discovery itself. This yearbook was found in an old trash bin outside a now-closed school, tucked away behind a pile of forgotten papers, debris, and remnants of the past. It wasn't like someone had simply misplaced it, this yearbook had been discarded like trash, almost as if it never mattered in the first place. And that, right there, is your first clue. Why would something so important, so full of memories, faces, and stories, be thrown away so carelessly? Was it because it was just another book that had outlived its usefulness? Or was it because someone wanted it gone for good? Now, here's where it gets interesting. As we take a closer look at the names listed inside the yearbook, one particular page stands out. It's one that's not like the others. At first, it's easy to miss, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. One student's name appears there, just like everyone else's, alongside their smiling picture. But the problem is, this student was never enrolled at the school. Not even close. This is where our journey begins, this is where the mystery starts to unfold, and where you and I are going to start connecting the dots. But I know what you're thinking right now, how can this be? How could a student appear in a yearbook if they were never even enrolled? What's the story behind this name, and what does it mean that they're part of this snapshot in time? What secrets lie buried in the pages of this book? And why has nobody noticed until now? These are questions that we need answers to, and I promise you, by the time we reach the end of this video, you'll have a clearer picture of what really happened. But that's not all. Because this story doesn't just end with one student's mystery. There's a much bigger web of lies, forgotten truths, and untold stories lurking behind this yearbook. The deeper we go, the more we uncover, and trust me when I say this, what you think you know right now will be turned upside down. And here's the thing, I'm not just telling you this to keep you hooked. I'm telling you because I need you to understand something important. This isn't just a random mystery, this is a story that could have happened to anyone. This is about the people, the memories, and the experiences we all share in school. It's about who gets remembered and who gets erased. It's about the hidden stories that never make it to the surface, the ones that get buried under layers of time and the weight of a school's history. This yearbook, this strange, out-of-place photograph, is just the tip of the iceberg. And I want you to stick around because the more we unravel, the more we realize just how deep this goes. But I'm not going to give it all away right now. That wouldn't be fair to you, the one person who is about to discover this hidden truth alongside me. I want you to feel the tension, the intrigue, the mystery, and to understand why this story matters. You are about to embark on a journey with me, and together, we'll discover something far beyond what either of us expected. So, I need you to stay with me, to keep watching as we peel back the layers of this story, one by one. And let me warn you now, by the time we reach the end, you'll be left with more questions than answers. But don't worry, I'll make sure we get those answers, even if it takes us to places no one would ever dare look. Ready to dive in? Because I promise you this, what we're about to uncover is something you won't forget. Stick around until the end, and you'll see exactly why this one student's name in the yearbook will haunt you long after this video ends. But first, let's start from the beginning. How did this yearbook end up in the trash? And more importantly, who exactly was this student who was never enrolled? We'll get to that. But trust me, the truth might just shock you. As we begin to peel back the layers of this mystery, let's start by looking closer at the main character, the student who somehow ended up in that yearbook. Who were they? What did they do? And why does their presence in the book, a yearbook they never should have been in, seem so out of place? To answer these questions, we need to go back a few months, to when things started to feel a little off. It all began when a seemingly normal high school student named Jake Parker, let's call him Jake, walked into that school for what seemed like just another year. He wasn't someone who stood out in the halls, but he wasn't exactly invisible either. He had a few close friends, a few acquaintances, and blended into the social fabric of a typical high school. On the outside, Jake was just another teenager navigating the ups and downs of high school life. But there was something about him, something that didn't quite sit right, even from the beginning. Jake had just transferred to this school halfway through the semester. There was no big fanfare about it. He didn't come from an out-of-state school or some prestigious academy. His transfer was quiet, almost as if it had been arranged last minute, and no one really questioned it. His paperwork was in order, or so everyone thought, but when people tried to recall where he'd come from, it became hard to pin down exactly. Some said he was from a small town nearby, others whispered that his family had only recently moved to the area. But the details were sparse, and there was no one who could quite vouch for him. His teachers remembered him as a quiet student who kept to himself in class, but not much else stood out. He didn't excel academically, but he wasn't failing either. He didn't participate much in school events, nor did he show much interest in extracurricular activities. On the surface, Jake was just another face in the crowd. Yet, there was always something unsettling about him. Something that never fully added up. In the weeks that followed, Jake's relationships with other students were strange. He had a few friends, but they always seemed to be a little distant, as though they weren't entirely sure of him. No one seemed to know much about his past, and those who tried to ask often found themselves stumbling through vague answers. Jake rarely talked about his life outside of school, and whenever the subject came up, he quickly changed the topic. It wasn't that he was rude, he was polite, even friendly in his own way. But there was always a sense of detachment, as if he were somehow living on the periphery of his own life, not fully engaged with anyone or anything. Despite this, there were a few people who took a particular interest in him. One of them was Sarah Walker, a senior who had a reputation for being the school's unofficial social detective. Sarah was the type of person who knew everyone's business, even the things they didn't want to be known. She had an uncanny ability to dig up details about anyone, no matter how small. And from the moment Jake arrived at the school, Sarah noticed him. At first, she tried to talk to him, just as she did with everyone else, but he wasn't as easy to break as most people. She'd ask casual questions, the kind you ask when you're trying to make a new friend, but Jake's responses were always short and evasive. She sensed something was off about him, there was a wall he put up, one she couldn't quite break through. But Sarah didn't give up that easily. In her mind, everyone had a story, and Jake was no exception. He was just a mystery that needed solving. Sarah wasn't the only one who felt like there was more to Jake than met the eye. Several students mentioned that he was often seen hanging around the school at odd hours, staying late after class, lurking near the back of the gymnasium, or even walking the empty hallways long after school had let out. Some claimed they'd spotted him in places he shouldn't have been, like in storage rooms or in areas that were off-limits to students. But the strangest part? No one had ever seen him actually enter or leave the building at the usual times. It was almost as if Jake had a different schedule from everyone else. His odd behavior didn't go unnoticed, though no one could prove anything. They just assumed he was a loner or someone who didn't quite fit in. Things took an even stranger turn when Jake seemed to suddenly disappear for a week. Nobody knew where he went, and when he returned, there was no explanation for his absence. He didn't offer any details about where he had been or why he had taken off. His teachers didn't question it, they simply marked his absence as excused, without asking any more questions. But his disappearance raised an eyebrow among a few students, including Sarah. She became more determined to get to the bottom of his story, but every lead she followed seemed to go nowhere. It was like Jake had mastered the art of being invisible, even when he was right in front of everyone. But here's the kicker: while Jake had been off the radar for that week, something strange had happened to the Yearbook committee. You see, each year, a small group of students worked together to assemble the yearbook, choosing which photos to include and deciding who gets featured in the various sections. Normally, the process was routine. But this year, there was a lot of last-minute scrambling. Some students claimed they had seen a mysterious figure lurking around the yearbook office late one night, hunched over the desk and making strange changes to the photos. One of the yearbook staff members, a junior named Emily, swore she had seen someone tampering with the yearbook files, though when she tried to confront the person, they had vanished. She couldn't remember much about their appearance, except that they were wearing a hoodie and seemed to be in a hurry. Could this mysterious figure be Jake? The timing seemed to line up with his unexplained disappearance. And why would anyone be tampering with the yearbook photos, unless they had a vested interest in altering who appeared in it? But was it just an innocent mistake, or was something darker at play? The deeper we dig, the more questions arise, and the answers only seem to get murkier. Was Jake involved in some strange plot to insert himself into the yearbook? Or is he merely a pawn in a much larger scheme, one that stretches far beyond what we can see? And what about those who were closest to him? Were they all part of the mystery, or just unwitting bystanders? As we continue to unravel this story, we'll find that not everything is as it seems, and the truth might just be more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. But we're just getting started. What happens next will challenge everything you thought you knew about this seemingly normal school, and soon, you'll start to realize that the real mystery isn't about the yearbook at all. It's about the things we never see coming, things that are hidden right in front of us. Stay with me, because this is only the beginning, and the twists and turns ahead will leave you questioning everything. As Sarah dug deeper into the mystery surrounding Jake, the walls began to close in on her in ways she hadn't expected. It started off with the small, unsettling feeling that something wasn't right. But as the days passed, it became clear that someone or something was actively trying to stop her from uncovering the truth. It wasn't just about Jake anymore, it was about a tangled web of secrets that no one wanted exposed. She started noticing that every time she found a clue, it would disappear just as quickly. A text message from an anonymous tipper about Jake's strange behavior one afternoon? Gone, deleted from her phone without a trace. A list of students who had been involved with the yearbook committee? It vanished from her school email, with no explanation from the IT department. And that wasn't the only thing that went missing. The more Sarah tried to follow the breadcrumbs, the more her investigation seemed to be erased. She had gathered evidence of Jake's mysterious behavior, including the reports from other students who had seen him lurking in places he shouldn't have been. But just as she was about to compile everything into a comprehensive timeline, her folder containing all the evidence disappeared from her locker, as though someone had known exactly what she was up to. Even the photo of Jake in the yearbook, the one that shouldn't have been there, had mysteriously been altered when she went to check on it one last time. The image was there, but the details were blurry, as though someone had tried to intentionally distort the picture. It was becoming clearer by the day that whoever, or whatever, was behind this wasn't going to let her get to the truth without a fight. We need to figure this out together. It's all connected, Em. The yearbook, Jake, the messages, everything. Emily hesitated before stepping back, as if weighing whether or not to let Sarah in. I don't think it's a good idea for you to be looking into this anymore. She stopped herself, her face contorting with confusion, like she was struggling to say something she wasn't sure she should. But before Sarah could push her to explain, something unusual caught her eye. On the kitchen counter sat a manila envelope, one that seemed out of place in the otherwise calm surroundings of Emily's house. The envelope had a name written on it, Sarah Walker. It wasn't addressed by anyone she knew. She could feel the tension in the air shift as Emily's eyes flickered toward it, then quickly back to Sarah. "Is this for me?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper, already sensing something wasn't right. Emily stammered. "It's just a mistake. I'll throw it away." But Sarah wasn't convinced. She reached for the envelope, ignoring Emily's protests, and tore it open. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper with a message scrawled in dark ink: "You're getting too close. Back off, or it's not just you who will suffer." The words sent a chill down Sarah's spine. It wasn't the first threat she'd received, but it was the first time it felt personal, like someone knew exactly who she was and what she was doing. And then, as if on cue, Emily snapped. "Sarah, you need to stop. Please. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. It's bigger than you think," she said, her voice shaking. "You don't know who you're dealing with." The panic in Emily's voice was unmistakable. For a moment, Sarah stood there, stunned, not knowing what to say. She had never seen Emily like this before. She was always the calm one, the one who kept everything together. But now, it felt like the very ground beneath her was shifting, like her best friend was trying to pull away from her just when she needed her most. "I don't understand. What do you mean it's bigger than I think? What's going on, Emily?" Sarah's words were laced with urgency, but Emily just shook her head, backing away from her friend, almost as if she were scared of something Sarah couldn't see. "You're not safe." "None of us are," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "Jake, he's not who you think he is. And the yearbook, it's not just a mistake. It's a warning." Before Sarah could ask another question, Emily turned, hurriedly grabbing her things and slamming the door behind her. In the blink of an eye, she was gone, leaving Sarah alone in the silence, her heart racing and her mind spinning. What had just happened? Was Emily part of the secret? Was she hiding something? Or was she genuinely trying to protect Sarah from something far worse? The questions piled up faster than she could process them, and just when she thought she had a grasp on things, everything got even more complicated. Sarah's mind reeled as she tried to make sense of what Emily had said, but no answers seemed to fit. Who was Jake really? Why had Emily suddenly turned against her? And most disturbingly, what was this warning about the yearbook? It had always seemed like a simple, albeit strange, mystery, but now it felt like it was wrapped in layers of deception and fear. Could it be that the yearbook wasn't just an innocent mix-up after all? Was there something more hidden between its pages, something that had been meant to stay buried forever? Later that night, as Sarah replayed everything in her mind, something else unsettling happened. She received another call, but this time, it wasn't a threat, it was a confession. The voice on the other end was low and distorted, almost as though someone were trying to disguise their identity. But Sarah recognized the voice immediately. It was Tommy, the quiet, elusive student who had warned her earlier to stop investigating. He wasn't the type of person to suddenly contact someone out of the blue, especially not under these circumstances. His voice was shaking with fear, and he spoke in hurried, disjointed sentences. "Sarah, it's not what you think. You've got it all wrong. Jake, he's not just a student. He's part of something much bigger. The yearbook, it's not just about a picture. It's a message. They're all connected. They're all..." Tommy's voice cracked before the line went dead. The call left Sarah in a haze of confusion and dread. What did he mean by "they're all connected"? Was Jake really involved in something sinister? And what was this shadowy group that Tommy seemed to know about? The more she tried to piece it together, the more tangled the web became. Emily, Tommy, Jake, they all seemed to be hiding something. But what? And who could Sarah trust? The stakes were no longer just about finding the truth, it was about survival. The deeper she went, the more she realized that the investigation had far more dangerous implications than she could have ever imagined. People were willing to go to extremes to keep the truth buried, and Sarah was beginning to understand just how far they'd go to stop her from uncovering it. With every clue she uncovered, The answers only led to more questions, and every time she thought she had a breakthrough, something or someone pulled the rug out from under her. As she sat there, staring at the dark screen of her phone, one thing was certain. The mystery surrounding Jake and the yearbook wasn't just about a missing student or an odd photograph. It was about a conspiracy, a cover-up that had been years in the making. And now, Sarah was in way too deep to back out. The only question left was who else was involved, and how much more would she have to sacrifice to uncover the truth. Sarah's heart raced as she walked home from school, her mind still reeling from the call with Tommy. His warning, the cryptic message about Jake, the yearbook, and the connections she had yet to understand echoed in her head like a constant hum. Something about it felt different. This wasn't just a school mystery anymore, it was something darker, something dangerous. She had been so consumed by the investigation, so focused on the pieces of the puzzle, that she had failed to notice how close she was getting to the edge. But as she walked, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. It started with a sense of unease, a flicker of movement in her peripheral vision, the sound of footsteps just a bit too close behind her. She quickened her pace, but the footsteps mirrored her own, always just a little too steady, a little too synchronized. Sarah turned a corner, forcing herself to calm down, thinking it was just her imagination. It was late in the afternoon, and the streets were quiet, save for the low hum of traffic in the distance. But as she glanced back, she saw a shadow ducking behind a car, just out of view. Her heart thudded in her chest. Was someone really following her? She had read about this kind of thing before, the slow, creeping sense of paranoia that takes over when you start digging too deep into something you shouldn't. But it was one thing to read about it, another thing entirely to experience it. Sarah quickened her steps again, her breath coming faster now, as if she could outrun whatever was stalking her. But every time she thought she was gaining some distance, the footsteps kept pace. She needed to get home. She needed to lock the door, turn on the lights, and make sure everything was secure. But the closer she got to her house, the more she realized that she wasn't alone. Her mind raced as she glanced behind her one more time. This time, she was certain there was someone there. The figure was tall, wearing a dark hoodie that obscured their face. It was impossible to make out any details, but Sarah's gut told her that it wasn't a coincidence. She turned the corner onto her street and made a split-second decision she wasn't going straight home. Her pulse was pounding as she darted down a side alley, hoping to lose whoever was following her. She took several sharp turns, all while keeping her eyes peeled for any sign of movement. The last thing she wanted was to lead whoever was after her to her doorstep. She glanced over her shoulder every few steps, but each time, there was nothing. The alley was empty, the streetlights flickering eerily above her. Sarah stopped in her tracks, listening. Silence. Complete silence. Had she lost them? Or was it just a matter of time before they caught up with her? She didn't wait to find out. She moved quickly toward a nearby bus stop, hoping the crowd would provide some level of safety. But as she stepped into the light, she froze. There, standing in the shadows just beyond the streetlight, was a figure. It was unmistakably Jake. His face was obscured by the hood of his jacket, but she knew it was him. Her heart skipped a beat as she took a hesitant step forward, unsure if she should confront him or just keep walking. Jake didn't move. He didn't even acknowledge her presence. The air between them seemed to thicken, as if the very space they occupied was holding its breath. Something about his stillness sent a cold shiver down Sarah's spine. It was like he was waiting for something. Or someone. Jake, she called out hesitantly, her voice trembling more than she had intended. He didn't respond, but his eyes, those cold, unreadable eyes, moved slowly to meet hers. The tension in the air was palpable, and for a moment, Sarah thought she might hear the sound of footsteps again, this time much closer. But before she could speak, Jake turned, slowly, and disappeared back into the darkness. Sarah stood there, frozen, staring after him. What the hell was going on? Why was he here? Was he following her, too? Her mind raced as she tried to make sense of everything, but she didn't have time to process it all. She needed to get home. She needed to get inside, lock the doors, and figure out what to do next. But as she hurried down the street, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. Her front door was slightly ajar. Panic surged through her as she approached, her heart pounding in her ears. She had locked the door that morning. She was sure of it. Had someone been inside? Had someone broken in? She didn't hesitate. Her hand shot out, pushing the door open further, revealing the dark interior of her home. The familiar scent of her mom's perfume and the quiet hum of the refrigerator felt strangely distant now, like something was off. She stepped inside cautiously, her eyes scanning the room for any signs of disturbance. Everything seemed in place, almost too perfect. But as she reached for the light switch, a piece of paper caught her eye. It was lying on the kitchen counter, folded neatly, as if someone had deliberately left it there. With trembling hands, Sarah unfolded the paper. It was a single sentence, written in the same dark ink that had appeared on the note she'd found in Emily's house. This time, it was simple but chilling. "You're not safe. They're watching." The world around her seemed to tilt, the walls closing in as she struggled to breathe. Who was watching her? What had she gotten herself into? Sarah's mind raced with possibilities, her thoughts swirling like a tornado. Was Jake somehow involved in this? Was Emily right when she said that they were all connected, and was Tommy's warning about the truth being too dangerous to uncover more than just a cryptic remark? She could feel the weight of it all bearing down on her, the realization sinking in that she wasn't just solving a school mystery, she was uncovering something far darker. Something that had been hidden for years, and something that was willing to do whatever it took to stay hidden. The unease, the paranoia, it all culminated in that moment. She wasn't just being followed anymore. She wasn't just dealing with cryptic threats. Sarah was being hunted. She could feel it in her bones, the cold, creeping certainty that someone or something was closing in on her. The people she had trusted, the ones she thought she could rely on, Emily, Tommy, even Jake, had all become pieces in a much larger, more dangerous game. And she was the one who had dared to challenge it. She had to get out of there. She had to figure out what was going on before it was too late. But as Sarah backed away from the door, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She hesitated before pulling it out, her hands shaking as she read the message. "Stop digging. You're getting too close. You'll regret it." The message was from an unknown number. But what hit her harder than the words was the realization that she had no idea who had sent it or what they were capable of. She wasn't just in danger anymore. She was tangled in something so much bigger than herself, and she was running out of time to find out what it was. Just as Sarah's mind swirled with confusion and paranoia, she began to piece together the details of everything that had happened over the past few weeks. But the deeper she dug, the more she realized she had been looking at it all wrong. What if the truth wasn't hiding in the shadows of the yearbook or buried in Jake's past? What if everything she thought she knew was a carefully constructed illusion designed to lead her astray? The thought hit her like a wave crashing against the rocks. What if the person she had trusted most, the one she thought was on her side, had been playing her the entire time? It was a strange, gnawing feeling that had settled deep in Sarah's gut as she stood in her living room, staring at the cryptic message on her phone. "Stop digging. You're getting too close. You'll regret it." The words felt like they had been written just for her, but they didn't make sense. Who could have sent it? Who would have the power to control every twist and turn of her investigation, manipulating her every move like a puppet on strings? But more importantly, why hadn't she seen it before? The answer had been right in front of her the entire time, someone she had known her entire life. Someone who had been in the center of the mystery from the beginning. Her phone buzzed again, snapping her out of her trance. The message was from an unexpected source, Emily. For a second, Sarah almost didn't want to read it. After everything that had happened, after Emily's bizarre behavior, it seemed like Emily had already made it clear she was pulling away. But there was something about the message that made her open it, a sudden sense of urgency that pushed her forward. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have told you sooner. I've been part of this all along, and you've been asking the wrong questions. The answers you're looking for, they're not what you think." The weight of the words hit Sarah harder than she could have imagined. Emily had been involved. Sarah's stomach dropped, her mind scrambling to process what it meant. How could that be? Emily had been her closest friend, her confidant. If she was involved in this twisted game, what other secrets was she hiding? The piece of the puzzle that had once seemed to fit so neatly now felt like it had shattered into 1,000 jagged shards, each one cutting deeper than the last. Before Sarah could gather her thoughts, Emily's next message arrived, even more cryptic than the last. You were never supposed to find out. I wasn't supposed to let you get this far. But it's too late now. They know you're close. You need to stay away from Jake, and you need to stop looking at the yearbook. The truth is buried, and the people who are trying to stop you, they're much closer than you think. A chill ran down Sarah's spine as she reread the message. The people who were trying to stop her? Who were these people, and why had Emily been so adamant about keeping her away from them? And more troubling, what did she mean by the truth is buried? Sarah's mind raced through the possibilities. Could Emily have been working with Jake this whole time? Was there something about the yearbook that was far darker than she could have imagined? As if on cue, Sarah's phone buzzed once again, but this time, it wasn't a message, it was a call. The number was unfamiliar, but the feeling that washed over her was too familiar. She picked it up hesitantly, her breath shallow in her chest. Sarah, the voice on the other end was calm, but there was something chilling about it. It was unmistakably Tommy. I don't have much time, Tommy said, his voice trembling as if he had just run a marathon. You need to listen to me. I made a mistake. I've been trying to warn you, but I was too afraid. You need to stop following this. Emily, she's not who you think she is. She's been in on it from the start. She. The line went dead. Sarah's mind was spinning. Tommy had been trying to warn her, but why? And what had he meant by Emily's been in on it from the start? The pieces she had been collecting for so long suddenly didn't fit anymore. The girl she thought she knew, the one she trusted to help her through this madness, had been playing her all along. What had Emily been hiding? Was she really involved in whatever dark secret had been festering under the surface of their school? And why had Emily, of all people, allowed her to dig so deep into something she clearly didn't want Sarah to uncover? Suddenly, a memory flashed in Sarah's mind, something she had almost forgotten. Back at the beginning of her investigation, when she first stumbled upon the mysterious student missing from the yearbook, Emily had seemed unusually interested in the case. She'd asked questions Sarah hadn't thought to ask. She'd pressed for answers at times when she could have simply let Sarah handle it herself. But at the time, Sarah had chalked it up to concern, to a friend just wanting to help. Now, it seemed like every move Emily had made was calculated. Every suggestion, every subtle hint, had been part of a larger plan. Sarah's chest tightened as a sickening realization settled in. Emily wasn't just trying to help her find the truth. She had been trying to keep her from finding it. The weight of it all pressed in on her. The walls of her own home felt like they were closing in, and the room seemed to shrink with every passing second. She couldn't trust Emily. She couldn't trust Tommy. Jake. What role did he play in all of this? Had he been an ally or a pawn, dragged into something much darker than Sarah had ever imagined? Her phone buzzed again, and this time, Sarah didn't hesitate. She opened the message, hoping to find some clarity, some explanation that would tie everything together. But the message wasn't from Emily, nor was it from Tommy. It was a simple, direct message that sent a surge of ice-cold terror through her. Stop digging, Sarah. Or next time, it won't just be a warning. The words were familiar, too familiar, and it was then that Sarah understood. This wasn't just a high school mystery anymore. This wasn't about a misplaced student or a forgotten photograph. This was about a deep, dangerous conspiracy, one that had been carefully hidden beneath layers of lies for years, and Sarah had just uncovered the first crack in that facade. The game had changed. There were people, powerful people, who would stop at nothing to keep the truth buried, and Sarah was now at the center of it all. What she had once thought was a story about a lost student, a yearbook, and a cryptic photo had grown into something far more sinister. And she had no idea how deep it went, or who, if anyone, she could trust. As Sarah looked out her window, her reflection staring back at her, she realized the horrifying truth. They were already watching her. The game was no longer just a mystery to solve, it was a battle for survival. And now, Sarah had to decide whether to walk away, to ignore the warning signs and forget everything she had uncovered, or to push forward, knowing full well that the price of the truth might cost her everything. The days after receiving that final, chilling message felt like a blur to Sarah. The weight of it all settled into her chest, constricting her lungs every time she took a breath. Everything had shifted, and she was no longer just some curious student trying to uncover a mystery. She was a part of something much bigger now, something far more dangerous. Every decision, every move she made, felt like it was part of a twisted game with rules she didn't understand. But she had no choice but to keep playing. The truth, whatever it was, had already consumed her, and the deeper she dug, the harder it became to back out. The pressure was suffocating. She couldn't sleep, couldn't think clearly. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of the people she thought she could trust: Emily, Tommy, Jake, blurred and twisted into something unrecognizable. Each one of them was a piece of the puzzle, but now, she was starting to wonder if they were all working against her. How could she be sure of anything? How could she know who was lying and who was telling the truth? And what if the people closest to her were the ones pulling the strings, manipulating her every move? It was one afternoon, 3 days after the ominous phone call from Tommy, when Sarah received another message. She had expected it, she knew the silence wouldn't last forever. But the timing of it left her shaken. The message was from an unknown number, but the words were direct and to the point. "Meet me. The old warehouse, near the train tracks. Midnight. Come alone." Her mind raced. Who could it be? The tone of the message made it clear they knew exactly where she was, that they were watching her, waiting for her to make the next move. The warehouse had been abandoned for years, a decaying structure on the outskirts of town. Sarah knew it well. Her dad had always warned her to stay away from places like that. But this was the moment, wasn't it? The one she'd been avoiding but knew was inevitable. She had to face whatever or whoever was behind all of this. The night fell cold, and Sarah stood by the door of her house, her coat wrapped tightly around her, the weight of the decision pressing down on her shoulders. Should she go? She didn't know what awaited her at that warehouse, but deep down, she knew she couldn't back out. The truth had already cost her peace of mind, had already stolen her sense of safety. And if she didn't go tonight, if she didn't push forward now, she would spend the rest of her life wondering what might have been. She couldn't live with that. But as she made her way through the quiet streets, a deep unease settled in. Every shadow, every rustle of the wind in the trees, seemed to carry a warning. Each one cutting deeper than the last. Before Sarah could gather her thoughts, Emily's next message arrived, even more cryptic than the last. "You were never supposed to find out. I wasn't supposed to let you get this far. But it's too late now. They know you're close. You need to stay away from Jake, and you need to stop looking at the yearbook. The truth is buried, and the people who are trying to stop you, they're much closer than you think." A chill ran down Sarah's spine as she reread the message. The people who were trying to stop her? Who were these people, and why had Emily been so adamant about keeping her away from them? And more troubling, what did she mean by "the truth is buried"? Sarah's mind raced through the possibilities. Could Emily have been working with Jake this whole time? Was there something about the yearbook that was far darker than she could have imagined? As if on cue, Sarah's phone buzzed once again, but this time, it wasn't a message, it was a call. The number was unfamiliar, but the feeling that washed over her was too familiar. She picked it up hesitantly, her breath shallow in her chest. Sarah, the voice on the other end was calm, but there was something chilling about it. It was unmistakably Tommy. "I don't have much time," Tommy said, his voice trembling as if he had just run a marathon. "You need to listen to me. I made a mistake. I've been trying to warn you, but I was too afraid. You need to stop following this. Emily, she's not who you think she is. She's been in on it from the start." She. The line went dead. Sarah's mind was spinning. Tommy had been trying to warn her, but why? And what had he meant by "Emily's been in on it from the start"? The pieces she had been collecting for so long suddenly didn't fit anymore. The girl she thought she knew, the one she trusted to help her through this madness, had been playing her all along. What had Emily been hiding? Was she really involved in whatever dark secret had been festering under the surface of their school? And why had Emily, of all people, allowed her to dig so deep into something she clearly didn't want Sarah to uncover? Suddenly, a memory flashed in Sarah's mind, something she had almost forgotten. Back at the beginning of her investigation, when she first stumbled upon the mysterious student missing from the yearbook, Emily had seemed unusually interested in the case. She'd asked questions Sarah hadn't thought to ask. She'd pressed for answers at times when she could have simply let Sarah handle it herself. But at the time, Sarah had chalked it up to concern, to a friend just wanting to help. Now, it seemed like every move Emily had made was calculated. Every suggestion, every subtle hint, had been part of a larger plan. Sarah's chest tightened as a sickening realization settled in. Emily wasn't just trying to help her find the truth. She had been trying to keep her from finding it. The weight of it all pressed in on her. The walls of her own home felt like they were closing in, and the room seemed to shrink with every passing second. She couldn't trust Emily. She couldn't trust Tommy. Jake. What role did he play in all of this? Had he been an ally or a pawn, dragged into something much darker than Sarah had ever imagined? Her phone buzzed again, and this time, Sarah didn't hesitate. She opened the message, hoping to find some clarity, some explanation that would tie everything together. But the message wasn't from Emily, nor was it from Tommy. It was a simple, direct message that sent a surge of ice-cold terror through her. Stop digging, Sarah. Or next time, it won't just be a warning. The words were familiar, too familiar, and it was then that Sarah understood. This wasn't just a high school mystery anymore. This wasn't about a misplaced student or a forgotten photograph. This was about a deep, dangerous conspiracy, one that had been carefully hidden beneath layers of lies for years, and Sarah had just uncovered the first crack in that facade. The game had changed. There were people, powerful people, who would stop at nothing to keep the truth buried, and Sarah was now at the center of it all. What she had once thought was a story about a lost student, a yearbook, and a cryptic photo had grown into something far more sinister. And she had no idea how deep it went, or who, if anyone, she could trust. As Sarah looked out her window, her reflection staring back at her, she realized the horrifying truth. They were already watching her. The game was no longer just a mystery to solve, it was a battle for survival. And now, Sarah had to decide whether to walk away, to ignore the warning signs and forget everything she had uncovered, or to push forward, knowing full well that the price of the truth might cost her everything. The days after receiving that final, chilling message felt like a blur to Sarah. The weight of it all settled into her chest, constricting her lungs every time she took a breath. Everything had shifted, and she was no longer just some curious student trying to uncover a mystery. She was a part of something much bigger now, something far more dangerous. Every decision, every move she made, felt like it was part of a twisted game with rules she didn't understand. But she had no choice but to keep playing. The truth, whatever it was, had already consumed her, and the deeper she dug, the harder it became to back out. The pressure was suffocating. She couldn't sleep, couldn't think clearly. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of the people she thought she could trust: Emily, Tommy, Jake, blurred and twisted into something unrecognizable. Each one of them was a piece of the puzzle, but now, she was starting to wonder if they were all working against her. How could she be sure of anything? How could she know who was lying and who was telling the truth? And what if the people closest to her were the ones pulling the strings, manipulating her every move? It was one afternoon, 3 days after the ominous phone call from Tommy, when Sarah received another message. She had expected it, she knew the silence wouldn't last forever. But the timing of it left her shaken. The message was from an unknown number, but the words were direct and to the point. Meet me. The old warehouse, near the train tracks. Midnight. Come alone. Her mind raced. Who could it be? The tone of the message made it clear they knew exactly where she was, that they were watching her, waiting for her to make the next move. The warehouse had been abandoned for years, a decaying structure on the outskirts of town. Sarah knew it well, her dad had always warned her to stay away from places like that. But this was the moment, wasn't it? The one she'd been avoiding but knew was inevitable. She had to face whatever or whoever was behind all of this. The night fell cold, and Sarah stood by the door of her house, her coat wrapped tightly around her, the weight of the decision pressing down on her shoulders. Should she go? She didn't know what awaited her at that warehouse, but deep down, she knew she couldn't back out. The truth had already cost her peace of mind, had already stolen her sense of safety. And if she didn't go tonight, if she didn't push forward now, she would spend the rest of her life wondering what might have been. She couldn't live with that. But as she made her way through the quiet streets, a deep unease settled in. Every shadow, every rustle of the wind in the trees, seemed to carry a warning. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following her again, just like before. Her steps grew quicker, her pulse faster as she reached the train tracks. The old warehouse loomed in front of her, dark and foreboding, the windows shattered and the door slightly ajar. Sarah hesitated at the entrance. This was it. She could feel it in her bones, there was no going back. But before she could step inside, a figure appeared from the shadows, stepping into her path. She froze, her heart skipping a beat as she recognized the person standing before her. It was Emily. Her breath caught in her throat. What was she doing here? How had she known Sarah would come? The suspicion that had been gnawing at her grew stronger, the pieces of the puzzle slowly starting to click together in a way she wasn't ready to confront. Emily had always been there, always pushing, always encouraging Sarah to dig deeper, to keep searching for answers. But now, here she was, standing between Sarah and the truth, like some kind of gatekeeper. "I knew you'd come," Emily said, her voice eerily calm, almost like she was waiting for this moment. "I couldn't let you go alone." Sarah's breath faltered as the weight of Emily's words sank in. "She knew I was coming. She's part of this." But before Sarah could speak, Emily held up a hand, cutting her off. "Listen," she said, her tone shifting to something more urgent, more pleading. "You don't understand what's really at stake here. You have no idea what you're about to walk into. You think you're looking for answers, but all you're doing is digging your own grave." Sarah's mind raced. Emily had always been the one to push her, to offer advice, to guide her through this mess. She had trusted her. But now, standing in front of her, Emily looked different. Her eyes were wide, her hands trembling slightly, as if she were hiding something or maybe afraid of something. It wasn't like Emily at all. "What are you talking about?" Sarah demanded, her voice barely above a whisper. "What's going on here? Why are you doing this?" Emily looked around nervously, her gaze flicking back to the entrance of the warehouse, as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows at any moment. "They're watching you. They're watching me. They know everything, Sarah. You don't know who you're dealing with." She paused, her breath shaky as she tried to steady herself. "I didn't want to get you involved. I never meant for any of this to happen. But now it's too late. We have to make a choice. You and me, we have to decide what comes next." Sarah took a step back, her mind whirling. "What choice? What are you talking about?" Emily's eyes darted toward the darkness behind the warehouse, her face twisted in a mix of fear and desperation. "If you keep going, if you keep digging into the yearbook, you're going to end up dead. There's no other way around it. And they won't stop until they've buried you just like they've buried everyone else who's tried to get too close to the truth." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. "What truth, Emily? What are you hiding?" Emily closed her eyes, her voice barely audible as she spoke. "It's not just about the yearbook. It's not just about Jake. This goes deeper, much deeper than anything you've imagined. And if you keep asking questions, they'll come for you, just like they came for me." The cold night air felt like it was closing in on Sarah as the weight of Emily's words settled in. She had come here looking for answers, but now it seemed like the answers were slipping through her fingers, and the more she pulled, the more the whole thing unraveled. Was it worth it? Was the truth worth her life? "Emily," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling as she took another step back, "you're telling me I have to choose between safety and the truth. Is that really what you're saying?" Emily's eyes filled with tears, her face crumbling as she reached out, grabbing Sarah's arm with a grip that was almost too tight. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "And the worst part is that I can't even tell you what the truth really is. I can't protect you anymore, but I can try to keep you safe. You have to choose, Sarah. You have to choose now." The air between them hung thick with tension, the weight of the moment too heavy to bear. Sarah stood there, frozen, as the world around her seemed to tilt, as if she was standing on the edge of a precipice, and every choice she made from this point forward could lead her into darkness. The uncertainty, the fear, the betrayal, it all swirled together, and she realized with a sickening clarity that she was on the verge of something irreversible. And she had no idea which direction to go. The silence that followed Emily's words was suffocating, and for a moment, Sarah felt as if the weight of the world had fallen on her shoulders. Emily's pleading gaze burned into her, desperate for Sarah to understand the gravity of what she was saying. But as the seconds ticked by, Sarah's heart beat louder than her thoughts, drowning out the reality of what was unfolding before her. The night felt impossibly still, and yet every fiber of Sarah's being screamed that something was about to shatter, that whatever choice she made would change everything. As Emily stood there, looking more like a stranger than the friend Sarah had known for years, Sarah's thoughts flashed to the messages, the threats, the faces of Jake, Tommy, and even her own parents, all of them tangled in some web she couldn't untangle. She had spent weeks searching for answers, convinced that the truth lay somewhere in the pages of that yearbook, somewhere in the story of the missing student whose name had been erased. But now, Emily's words were threatening to rewrite everything. This wasn't just about a mysterious student anymore, it was about a conspiracy so deep, so vast, that Sarah's mind refused to process it all. "Emily, I don't understand," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper, a tremor of doubt seeping into her words. "What are you talking about? You're telling me to stop, but I can't. This isn't just about me anymore. There are too many people involved. There are too many lies. I have to find the truth." Emily's face twisted in agony, and she stepped closer, gripping Sarah's arm again. "No, you don't understand. This is bigger than you. Bigger than both of us. There are people in this town, people in power, who will stop at nothing to keep this buried. If you keep digging, you're not just risking your life. You're risking everything." Sarah's eyes widened as the words sank in. She had been so focused on unraveling the mystery of the yearbook, so consumed by the idea of solving it, that she hadn't seen the true scale of what was happening. People in power? That meant more than just high school cliques or teachers with dark secrets. It meant there were powerful forces, lawyers, politicians, maybe even people in law enforcement working to suppress the truth. And they would go to any lengths to make sure it stayed hidden. Before Sarah could process the magnitude of what Emily had said, the ground beneath her seemed to shift. The door to the warehouse creaked open, and a figure emerged from the darkness. It was Tommy. His face was drawn, pale, his eyes frantic, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I told you to stay away from this," Tommy said, his voice shaking with a mixture of fear and anger. "I warned you, Sarah. I told you not to go any further, but you didn't listen." The words hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. More people. Who else could be involved? Who else could she trust? "They've been orchestrating this whole thing for years," Tommy continued, his voice lowering as if he feared someone might hear him. "Everything, Jake's disappearance, the erased name in the yearbook, even the whole damn school system, has been part of a bigger plan. They've been using us all as pawns." Sarah's head was spinning. This wasn't just a high school mystery anymore. This was a conspiracy that had infected the very core of her town, and her quest for answers had made her a target. Her stomach twisted as she thought back to every step she'd taken, every lead she'd followed, every person she'd trusted. The closer she had gotten to the truth, the deeper she had fallen into a trap. "Who are they?" Sarah asked, her voice sharp, the urgency clawing at her throat. She had to know. There could be no more lies. No more half-truths. Tommy hesitated again, his eyes darting nervously as if considering how much to reveal. "It's not just one group. It's a network. A collection of people with ties to the school, to local businesses, to the police. They've been running things in this town for years, and they're not going to let you expose them now." A chill ran through Sarah's spine. This wasn't just a small-town mystery anymore, it was an elaborate, dangerous operation that had been set in motion long before she'd ever stumbled into it. She wasn't just a curious teenager trying to uncover the truth anymore, she was an enemy to a powerful group of people who could destroy her without a second thought. But there was more. Emily, still trembling, stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah, there's something you don't know. Jake, he's not just missing. He's involved in all of this. He's been part of their plan from the beginning." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "What? Jake? How? Why would he?" "Because," Emily interrupted, her voice cracking, he was working with them. He's been helping cover things up. The entire time. I didn't want you to know, but I can't keep lying to you. He's not who you think he is. None of it, is what you think. Everything that Sarah had thought she understood about the mystery, about the people involved, suddenly shattered in an instant. The one person who had seemed like an ally, someone who might be able to help her piece this together, was the very person who had been feeding her false information, who had been keeping her in the dark all along. Jake wasn't just a victim in this, he was a perpetrator. And Emily, who had stood by her through everything, was now part of the very conspiracy Sarah had been chasing. Sarah's mind raced, and her chest tightened with a mix of fear and betrayal. She had trusted them. She had let them guide her, let them lead her down this dangerous path, and now she understood she was on her own. A loud crash echoed from inside the warehouse, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps, fast and heavy, coming closer. Tommy grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her back as Emily's face went pale. "They're here. We need to go. Now." But it was too late. The door burst open, and a group of figures emerged from the shadows, their faces hidden behind masks. The air around Sarah seemed to thicken, the oppressive weight of the situation pressing in on her as her heart raced. She was surrounded, trapped in a nightmare she hadn't asked for, and the very people she thought would save her were now the ones leading her straight into the hands of those who would stop at nothing to bury the truth. In that moment, Sarah realized the full extent of the danger she was in, and the stakes had never been higher. Her every instinct screamed at her to run, to get away before it was too late. But there was no escape now. She was in it, all the way. And the price of the truth was about to cost her more than she ever could have imagined. The night had turned colder, the chill creeping through Sarah's bones as she stood in the shadow of the old warehouse, surrounded by figures whose faces were hidden beneath dark masks. The air felt thick with tension, each breath she took feeling heavier than the last. Her heart pounded so loudly in her ears that she could hardly hear the faint rustle of the wind or the muffled sounds of movement from within the building. She was out of options, trapped in a place she couldn't escape from, with only one way out, by uncovering the final pieces of the puzzle, the truth that had eluded her all this time. Tommy and Emily stood just behind her, their eyes wide with fear and uncertainty, but Sarah's mind was sharp, focused. This was it. The moment she had been running toward, the one that would either shatter everything she thought she knew or give her the answers that had been slipping through her fingers for weeks. The truth. It was within her reach now, but at what cost? "Sarah," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "We have to leave. It's too late. We can't beat them." But Sarah didn't move. She wasn't going anywhere. The man who stood in front of her, his dark figure towering in the doorway of the warehouse, had a face she recognized. It wasn't the face of a stranger or even the face of some faceless villain hiding in the shadows. No, it was Jake, the same Jake who had disappeared, the same Jake she had once trusted with her secrets, the same Jake who had been a part of this twisted game from the start. He stepped forward, his eyes cold and empty, his face hardening as he looked at her. "I never wanted you to get caught up in this," Jake said, his voice low and almost regretful, but his eyes betrayed him. "But now that you're here, now that you've figured it out, there's no turning back. You shouldn't have come." The words hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. She had always believed there was something off about Jake's disappearance, some hidden truth that he wasn't telling her. But now, standing face to face with him, she realized how deeply he had been involved in the conspiracy, how much he had lied to her and everyone else. Her mind flashed to all the times she had trusted him, all the times she had relied on him to be the one to uncover the answers. And now, in this moment, she understood. He had never been on her side. "Not really. You were part of this all along," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper, thick with disbelief and anger. "You were working with them. All this time, I thought you were helping me." Jake's lips curled into a smirk, the mask of sincerity he had worn for so long slipping away. "I wasn't helping you, Sarah. I was keeping you distracted, keeping you away from the truth. The real truth. And now it's too late." A sharp sound, like a deep breath being held for too long, filled the air as the masked figures behind him moved forward. Sarah could feel her stomach twist in panic. This was it, the moment when everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed, was about to come crashing down around her. She had been so close. But now, with Jake's betrayal out in the open, everything felt out of her control, like the pieces of the puzzle were slipping out of reach, one by one. "You think you've figured it out," Jake continued, his voice growing colder, more menacing. "But you're wrong. You don't know what you're dealing with. This isn't just about some stupid yearbook or a missing student. It's bigger than that. So much bigger. You've been chasing shadows, Sarah, and now you're in too deep." "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, her voice shaking with a mix of fury and disbelief. "What are you really after?" Jake paused, his expression unreadable. He glanced over his shoulder at the others, who stood silently, waiting for his command. Then, without warning, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick folder, its contents spilling slightly as he placed it in front of Sarah. She could feel her breath catch in her throat as she saw the documents inside. Photos. Files. Names. All of them connected, and all of them pointing to a dark and dangerous network of people that had been operating in the shadows of her town for years. "It's not just about covering up one student's disappearance," Jake said, his voice low and almost sad. "It's about control. Power. Manipulation. And we've been doing it for longer than you know." As Sarah stared at the papers in front of her, her mind raced to make sense of it. Names of local politicians, teachers, even law enforcement, people she had known her whole life, people she had trusted, who had been pulling strings behind the scenes, influencing everything in the town for their own gain. The yearbook wasn't just a forgotten relic of the past. It was a symbol. A tool. Something that had been used to control the narrative, to keep people in line, to make sure that no one ever uncovered the truth. "You don't understand," Jake muttered, as if talking to himself. "You never understood the game. And now, you're a threat. They'll never let you walk away. None of us will." A sickening realization washed over Sarah as everything clicked into place. The threats. The silence. The warning signs. It had all been leading to this. She wasn't just trying to uncover the truth anymore. She was fighting for her life. And the people who had helped her, who had seemingly stood by her side, they were part of the very conspiracy she was trying to expose. The ground beneath her feet seemed to shift as she realized the final truth. This wasn't just a battle for justice. It was a battle for survival. If she wanted to leave here alive, she had to act now. But before Sarah could make a move, she felt the sharp tug of a hand on her wrist, yanking her back into the darkness of the alley. She didn't know who it was, but she didn't have to. The masked figure who had grabbed her pulled her toward the back of the warehouse with terrifying force. There was no time to think, no time to breathe. Her head swirled with the implications of what she had just uncovered, and she realized she was running out of time. And just as she reached the corner of the building, her entire world shifted again. A familiar voice shouted from behind her. "Sarah, stop." She spun around, heart hammering in her chest, as the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. It wasn't Tommy or Emily. It wasn't Jake. It was someone she hadn't seen in days, someone she had thought was safe, someone who had been with her from the very beginning. Her mother. And suddenly, Sarah understood the cruelest twist of all. It wasn't just the conspiracy. It wasn't just the people she thought she could trust. It was the fact that her own mother had been a part of it all along, hiding in plain sight, pulling the strings from the very start. The shock hit her like a freight train. The betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, it had all come from the one person who should have protected her. And now, she had no idea who she could trust or how she was going to survive this. Everything she thought she knew about her life, about the people in it, was nothing but a carefully constructed lie. And as her mother's eyes locked with hers, a slow, cold smile spread across her face. It was too late for Sarah to turn back now. The game had changed, and she was its final pawn. The truth, as Sarah would come to realize, was never as simple as she had once hoped it would be. Now you're in too deep, and it's too late to pull back. "What the hell is going on?" Sarah demanded, her pulse hammering in her ears as she tried to make sense of the chaos that had just escalated to new, terrifying heights. "You're all part of this, aren't you? You've been lying to me the whole time, both of you." Tommy hesitated, his eyes flicking to Emily before he spoke again. "Not exactly. But, there are people we thought we could trust, who've been pulling the strings from the start. And we're not the only ones they've manipulated. It wasn't just about finding the missing pieces of a puzzle or uncovering a long-forgotten secret hidden in the dusty pages of a yearbook. It wasn't about exposing the conspiracy that had quietly shaped her town for years, nor was it about bringing justice to the people who had manipulated her life from the shadows. No, the real truth was that everything, everyone, had always been part of the same unbroken chain, a chain of power, secrets, and manipulation that had been passed down for generations. And now, standing in the aftermath of it all, Sarah had to decide what to do with that truth. Her mother's cold, calculating smile had been the last piece of the puzzle she hadn't expected, but it also revealed everything. The quiet conversations she had overheard, the subtle way her mother had always been just slightly too involved in everything, the way Sarah had been shielded from certain truths, all of it made sense now. The betrayal was gut-wrenching, and yet, Sarah felt a strange clarity emerge from the chaos. This wasn't just about revenge, or exposing the corruption. It was about survival, about accepting that some things were too big, too dangerous, to face head-on. In the end, Sarah had no choice but to walk away. The files, the documents, the names of those who had conspired to keep their secrets hidden, they all remained in the darkness, locked away in a place where they could never be fully understood. But in that moment, Sarah understood something far more valuable. She couldn't change the past. She couldn't fix everything, and she couldn't undo the damage that had been done. But she could choose how to move forward. The last time Sarah saw her mother was in the cold, dim light of the warehouse, standing alone in the doorway, her figure a dark silhouette against the murky shadows. Her mother had said nothing as Sarah turned her back and walked away. Maybe there was nothing left to say. The power was no longer in her mother's hands, and the town, the people who had controlled everything for so long, had underestimated Sarah's will to survive. Months passed. The town slowly returned to normal, at least on the surface. People went about their lives, their routines, as if nothing had ever happened. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, something bigger than her, bigger than the yearbook mystery, something that no one could ever fully escape. Every now and then, she'd catch glimpses of the people who had been involved in the conspiracy, faces that seemed too familiar, too close to home. Sometimes, she'd hear their names whispered in the halls of school or in the conversations of strangers, and she'd wonder just how many other secrets were still buried, waiting to be uncovered. But Sarah had changed. She wasn't the same girl who had once wanted to expose every truth, to pull every string until everything unraveled. She'd learned that sometimes, the more you know, the less you can do. The weight of knowledge had shifted within her, leaving her with a sense of quiet resignation. Peace, Sarah realized, wasn't found in answers. It was found in letting go, in accepting that some things were never meant to be uncovered. The one thing Sarah couldn't erase, the one question that still haunted her, was the name she had never found in the yearbook, the missing student whose identity had been erased completely, the person who, it turned out, had been at the center of everything. Who were they? And why was their name hidden, wiped away, as if they had never existed at all? Was it possible that they were still out there, alive, watching from the shadows? Or had they been the key to everything, the one thing that no one could afford to remember? As Sarah stood alone in the park one afternoon, the cool wind stirring the leaves around her, she caught sight of something familiar, an old yearbook, its cover worn and faded by time, resting on the bench in front of her. She almost didn't want to open it. Almost. But curiosity, the same curiosity that had driven her from the very beginning, tugged at her. She walked over, her hand trembling slightly as she flipped it open to the page where the name should have been. There it was again, that empty space. The missing name. And beneath it, a scribbled message: "Some secrets are better left buried." A chill ran down Sarah's spine as the words echoed in her mind. But this time, she didn't feel the need to uncover more. This time, she felt the weight of the truth in her hands, the weight of everything she had learned. Maybe the missing student, maybe the conspiracy, maybe even her own mother, had always been part of something bigger than herself. And maybe, just maybe, some mysteries weren't meant to be solved. As Sarah closed the yearbook and turned away from the park bench, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. The answers, if they existed, would stay hidden in the dark corners of the town, locked away where they belonged. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt the quiet peace of knowing that not everything needed to be understood, that sometimes, the best thing you could do was let the questions remain unanswered. But deep down, a part of her still wondered. And as she walked away, the sound of footsteps behind her made her hesitate, just for a moment. Was someone following her? Or was it just her mind playing tricks, reminding her that the past was never truly gone, just waiting to rise again? The mystery lingered, like a shadow she could never quite shake, and for Sarah, that was enough.